at all times there is something to achieve, right? And I think that's common for anybody, right? At all times there is something in your mind that is priority. And what I really just try to do is list down what exactly is my priority and achieve it. And whatever is unnecessary to achieve it is generally not done.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Next Move podcast. And if this is your first time on the show, we're a podcast that share the stories, strategies, and tools behind people who are making an impact in India. And today we have an extremely fun one that I've learned so much from just by researching. We have Shobhit Banga, who's the co-founder of Josh Talks, a company that is looking to inspire the youth of India by connecting them with the right mentors, information, and education. And like I was saying earlier, I had so much fun researching this because Shobhit's story is so unique to everybody else. And it seems like when everybody else was taking a right, finishing off high school or going to college, Shobhit was taking a left and following his own path and following his own gut instinct. And that's kind of the main point that I really want to follow up on this podcast, is really exploring that gut instinct. So Shobhit, I'm so happy to have you on, man. How are you doing?
Fantastic, Arman. Thanks a lot for having me.
Awesome. So let's get straight into it. And I want to start off with the fact that the first thing I heard was you dropped out of high school. Can you talk about the story behind that? Because that's the first left turn. Nobody does that. Nobody even thinks of doing that. What's the story there?
I think if I look back at my childhood, there's one thing that I can, like, if I have to summarize it in sort of one sentence, it would be that my dad always told me that the excellence is the only way forward. And to achieve excellence or to achieve incredible mastery, you have to go down a path that others don't go down. And somewhere there was always this incredible drive from him to go out there and be the goddamn best possible. And for that, he said school was an absolute waste of time, that, like, too many people are good at school. And it's not, even if you are damn good at school, it doesn't mean anything. And so he said, go be incredible at something else. And that's when tennis is something I absolutely used to love. And I went and I tried to pursue that full time, try to make a career out of it.
What happened with the tennis story? Because you're going to school regular, you're doing the same thing other kids are doing, and are you just practicing tennis on the side and you're saying, wow, I really like this? Or was it inbuilt in your mind that, look, I want to be a professional athlete, and if I want to do that, I have to go full time with it?
So I belong to a very, very small town in Himachal, and that's where I used to be when I got introduced to tennis, because in that small town, a lot of foreigners lived there because of an ashram, and they had made this sort of make-do tennis court. It actually had these pebbles and stones in the middle, so it wasn't really an actual tennis court, but they used to make do and play there. And that's when I got introduced to tennis. Now I was just in my fifth standard at that time, and my dad noticed that I would get up at 4 in the morning before school, go and play tennis before I would go to school, by choice. And he said, hey Shobhit, you're interested in tennis, why don't we do this? Why don't we shift from our small town and go down to Bangalore, and try and do this in a more serious manner. And it was, I think, by the time I was in 8th standard, by the time this conversation was happening, and in 8th standard we actually did that.
Wow. So can you talk about the thinking at that point? Because was it just like a kid that was saying, like I was saying earlier, that you want to full on go at it? Or was it just that you didn't like school? And did you also think, like, I would put myself in that position and I would think, man, what if this doesn't go well? What am I gonna do? So there's a lot of doubt that would creep up. Did you have any doubt during that decision?
So I think I was just too young to doubt anything. What I did see was my parents had an incredible amount of stress about taking this decision with me, because I think the doubts come from what people consider normal, And it's when your grandmother will ask you, and somebody at a kitty party will ask my mom, and somebody will, my dad's colleagues will ask him, what's your son doing, are you guys crazy, is when doubt kicks in. But I think the drive with which the sort of reason because of which we did it was very, very strong, which was to which was like sort of my dad saying that go out there and do more, you have to be more. And there was no other way. So of course there was doubt, but it was never really a thing oh my god, have we taken the wrong decision. That never happened. It was just, don't think so much, just go out there and do it. One thing was clear: you can't go down the same path as everybody else and expect different results. So if you want a different result, you have to go down a different path, and this seemed like a very different path.
And what did the day look like when you were preparing to be a professional tennis player? Like, were you training 3 times a day, 2 times a day? What were you doing to get into a position where you were going to go pro?
So I think there were the key day was not the day when I sort of decided to go pro. The key day was the day when we decided to shift from that small town to Bangalore, when things really changed. Because until then, so I couldn't even name one tennis player because I couldn't speak in English, and you know therefore I didn't know any of these tennis players. So the really the day that changed everything was when I was still in that small town. I remember it was this one of these unit tests in school that was going on. So my mom was teaching my younger brother, and my dad was teaching me. And he was teaching me physics. I think my mom was teaching my younger brother Hindi. And there was just my mom was shouting at my brother. My dad was trying to teach me. It just seemed like so much turmoil to prepare for this exam, where a lot of things what we were learning were really meaningless. And I think my brother was crying, so there was this chaos in the house. And my dad looks at me, and we are in my bedroom where he's teaching me physics. He's lying on the bed, and I'm walking around, and he's trying to question and do things like that. um, is when he just puts the book down and he says, Shobhit, let's go to Bangalore. uh, and that's it. So literally just like that, the next day I gave the exam. My brother gave his exam. Then I think that was probably the last exam or something, because my parents came to pick us up in our school uniform. We drove to Delhi, where my grandparents, where my mom's parents stay, and we stayed there for a night. Took a flight, went to Bangalore, never looked back.
Wow. So the thing with,
Yeah.
again, from here is your dad is such a, it seems like he's such an inspirational part of your story to where you are today. And can you talk about your dad? Has he always been like so impulsive and makes the decision and says, we're going all in and we're going to do this and move forward?
Yeah, he's definitely extremely impulsive. His validation or his explanation for why it's generally always the right decision is because he explains gut as a science that we can't understand yet. So subconscious mind is doing some calculation and saying this is the right decision, but you can't really explain why. Actually, I found out much later that Malcolm Gladwell has written a book. It's called Blink, which basically says the same thing. It says the sometimes the subconscious mind can do some calculations that otherwise you can't yet consciously do, and define why is this way, or why should I take this decision. Um, but therefore he follows his gut extremely strongly, and yeah, we've come to learn that it is often the right thing to do.
Wow. So when you were playing tennis, right, and you dropped out of school, I just want to ask one question about the thinking, because that must be a much more lonely experience than going to school, right? You know, in school you're always surrounded by friends, people, everybody all the time, but tennis is an individual sport and it was likely you and your coach. So did you actually enjoy that process, or was it tough on you, because you must have been what, 14, 15 years old at this point?
Yeah, this I don't think I've ever spoken about this, but yeah, it was incredibly hard. There are a couple of reasons for this, because when I shifted from a very, very small town to a big corporate English speaking city like Bangalore, the first thing that happened were that, so I was actually, when I left school eventually, I was extremely happy too, because of the pressures that I was facing in Bangalore. Now, I could speak little bit in English because I was going to an English medium school, and my dad's a doctor. My mom has done masters in English, etc. So I was a very, education focused. So I could speak English a little bit, but Bangalore was a world of a difference, like, so the kind of pressures I was facing in school, the kind of bullying that was happening was a lot. Um, so I was quite happy to first of all leave school, but because of that, what happened was that, and especially during the cycling phase as a transition, what happened was that, like you really don't have any company at all. um, so yeah, it's a pretty tough phase, but I think that is what is, I would say, the like very rarely in our life do we ever get time to completely be with ourselves. And I got almost an overdose of that because of both tennis, leaving school, and because of the entire cycling phase, which will come after this. I think that led to me understanding what I want, who I am, what do I care about, questioning and answering those questions much earlier. So I think being lonely was a fantastic thing to happen at that age.
And I think that's a really good point because especially in today's world, when you have social media, you have endless meetings, you have this and that, you really don't get time to think. And that time to think, at least I've seen, has been such an important part of just being able to reflect. But so you got injured, and for an athlete, that's the worst thing. That's kind of like the end of life, you feel, especially because that was everything for you at that point. Could you talk about the injury and how you dealt with it, and if you thought that you would move forward with tennis after it, or did you think that there was something else out there for you?
Yeah. So, so uh, you know, the, so I realized after reaching Bangalore and training for about a year and a half ish, that that I wasn't the best player out there. Um, and people had started since they were 4 years old. They had been playing tennis since they were like 5, 6, 7 years old, um, and somewhere there were players who I met for the first time who were much more talented than me, because of course in Kullu, which was the town that I came from, you didn't meet incredible players. So when I reached there, I was like, oh God, and especially after training for a year, you're like, okay, I'm still really far behind.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got injured, I was actually quietly quite happy, because I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out what else to do, because otherwise quitting is really, really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so and so now what happens with most injuries is that it's not clear if this is an injury that will never let you play again, because most injuries are healable, but sometimes they keep reoccurring. So this was something like that, where I took 2 months break and I played again. I took a few months break, I played again, but it was not working. So eventually, my mom and my brother and me had shifted to Bangalore for tennis, and we actually decided that okay, we will come back to a town much closer, because my dad was still doing to and fro from our hometown. So we shifted
Okay.
back to Chandigarh when I joined an academy in Chandigarh. But I knew that okay, it's very likely that I won't be able to get back to tennis at all.
So the thinking must have been like, okay, we're going back to school. Or what happened, because you ended up, like you were talking about earlier, you ended up moving into cycling and we're doing really well there. So how did that all happen?
After this phase of tennis not working out, cycling used to be a part of my fitness training
Mm.
for tennis. And I had this trainer who was one of the best cyclists in India at that time. And so I got exposed to that world. Most people today don't even know that there is a now people are coming to know that there are a lot of hobby cyclists. We can see cyclists early in the morning, especially on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a good, I think, 10ish years ago, uh, 8ish years ago. It was during that phase when I said that okay, I am extremely frustrated because I have to give up tennis. So let me just start cycling, and sort of see what happens. And I got a call from my trainer saying that Shobhit, there's a race coming up in Bangalore. It's India's first endurance cycling race. It's from Bangalore to Chamundi Hills, which is beyond Mysore and back. So it's going to be the longest race in India yet. It's 300 and something kilometers. Why don't you come and participate in it, since you're not doing anything anyway?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was in Chandigarh at this time, which is a town in which is a city in North India. I had my bike there. I took that to Himachal. I trained there for a month, flew to Bangalore, did that race, and I did extremely well actually because when you're sort of when I was giving up tennis, it was an extremely frustrating period. Like it's a very intense period where you have a feeling of failure. You want to prove yourself, but you can't. So I for that 1 month that I was in Himachal, I trained incredibly hard um, for that race in Bangalore. And when I ended up going, I did quite well in it, and said that okay, hey, this is the entire world out here, and it's absolutely an unknown world. Let's see what happens. I'm gonna stay back and I'm gonna cycle. Let's see what happens. I'll try and go pro here. Also, like I say this often that quitting is like people say quitting is easy. Quitting is much tougher than like it's much easier to just maintain status quo and continue playing tennis. But when I was quitting, it was like it's you're in like I was in such a high degree of guilt of letting my parents down, letting everybody down, not being able to perform, being a loser. That that when you're in that phase, you just want to like you're willing to go through anything. And I think that 1 month of training in Himachal was like extremely hard. Like I pushed a lot because I needed an outlet for all this frustration, and this was a way to do well. And I think one of the reasons that the race in Bangalore went really well. Went
I
really
want
well.
to touch upon what you learned from that experience, but just before that, you qualified through that race for a very prestigious race in France, and you were the youngest person to qualify for that race. What was that like to you? Like, were you did that affirm and immediately change your mindset from wow, okay, tennis is gone, and you said that loser mindset that you had, did that completely switch, and now you could focus that energy completely on this new dream?
So this particular race in Bangalore was not the race that qualified me for that prestigious event. Um, the, the prestigious event is called Paris-Brest Paris. It's a race that happens once every 4 years in France, and it's one of the most elite cycling events out there. Um, how I qualified for that is there are set of 4 races that happen in Bangalore. You have to complete each of those in a particular time. If you do that, you qualify for this super prestigious race. So after I did this first event in Bangalore of cycling, I stayed back in Bangalore and started preparing for these 4 races. This became my immediate next objective. So these 4 races are: the first is a 200-kilometer race, then is a 300-kilometer, then a 400-kilometer, and a 600-kilometer race. Once you complete all 4 of these races within a certain amount of time, you get to qualify for Paris, which is 1200 kilometers in France. Where across the world these competitions are happening. So these qualifications happen in many cities across the world. Everybody who qualifies meets there once every 4 years to participate in the mega race, which is Paris. So after this first event in Bangalore, I spent about I think year and a half ish qualifying for that. I did qualify for it, and yeah, and from there it was
So
pretty.
what happened? What happened in the race?
So after I qualified for it, I applied for Paris. I was looking forward to it, almost ready to get everything together. I get a mail back from them saying that you are underage. I was 17, and you need to be 18 to participate. And it's like I think that was quite a heartbreak at that time. I was like, what are you talking about? This is the only thing I've done for the past so many months. Sort of the only thing on my mind. And but it didn't happen. I tried to fight it a lot, but the problem was that in India, like we know, there was no rules. You can't even attempt to qualify for it if you're under 18 actually. um,
So
so
why is
that didn't work
that?
out.
Why can't you qualify before 18? Doesn't make sense.
So endurance cycling is a very extreme level of sport. So they say that one of the the toughest sporting events in the world is the race across America, which happens in the US, which is also endurance cycling. So endurance cycling, you could say, is probably the toughest sporting event in the world, most grueling on the body. So for example, I
Mm.
reached out. So after this happened with me, I actually reached out to some of the world's best endurance cyclists. Marco Polo was one of them. Um, um, and he said that, absolutely not, you should not attempt this race at all. So somewhere when I started hearing those kind of people say that to me, I said that okay, fine, probably I have to move on and do something else. But the really amazing thing that happened is that India was putting together its first professional cycling team. So it's a private cycling team, just like they have in France and in other places. And we
Hmm.
were getting that. That team was being put together. So the day I qualified, the next day after that, I immediately got a call from the person who was creating that team. That, hey Shobhit, we heard you qualified for the Paris. Would you like to come in and join us in this team that we're creating? And it was called Specialized Kinkini Cycling Team, um, which became India's first pro um, cycling team. So I became sort of the youngest member there. So there was light at the end of the tunnel, so to say. And
Wow.
yeah.
So you join this team, and were you enjoying the practices? Did you enjoy the new sport, and was this the new path, or did you feel that this potentially wasn't enough? Because I've read and I heard an interview where you said that people who were on the team were also working at the bike shop and were fixing your bike. And so can you talk about that and your experience there? Did you think that that was the future for you?
So two things here, right? The first is that so cycling in India is not an elite sport, or at least at
Hmm.
that time it wasn't an elite sport at all. Especially the people who are trying to go pro are like tennis. Otherwise, it's a pretty expensive sport. Coaching is expensive, equipment is expensive. There is no sort of government funding here and things like that. There are no jobs in the government sector here. So in tennis, it's a very different kind of a crowd. In cycling, it's a very different crowd because, for example, one of the biggest reasons that a lot of people from the grassroots of the country try go pro in cycling is because you get government jobs. So railways will hire you, air force will hire you, and things that so that is a big reason for the interest from people. So in cycling, that was the case where the people who were a part of my cycling team were not, so you could say they monetarily they were not um, they were not doing that well. So for example, a few of my friends used to work at cycle stores, and they were so the experience that I got from there was this, that they and a lot of things like this led to Josh, um, that somebody has so much potential to go out there and do incredibly well, but simply because the kind of monetary background they came from, there was very limited chance in them to go out there and actually perform to their potential and things like that. So yeah, that was the first thing. And the second was that this new cycling was not endurance cycling. This was 60, 70, 80 kilometer, very, very fast races. This is what the Tour de France is. And this wasn't really my cup of tea. I wasn't enjoying it much. Um, and also, I don't think I was that good at it. Um, Somewhere if your heart doesn't lie in it deeply, it's very tough to sort of become world class at it. And so those kind of questions that started come in my mind. But of course I was very excited to do it, but somewhere I decided that okay, this is not it. um, and I needed a change. I needed to do something else. So this was the second time I quit something.
So
Third
you
time in
know,
fact.
I really like this because, like I said earlier, it's all about following your gut instinct that your dad really taught in you and really pushed you about. But I want to ask you one thing that just came to my mind. Do you think 10 years ago there wasn't as much social media? It wasn't as everybody is not posting their lives all the time. Everything is not tracked, and it's less pressure now that it was then than it is now. Do you think that if social media was as rampant as it is now, do you think that would have had an impact in some of the things you did?
A little bit, but I don't think so much. For me, I'm speaking about. I don't know about others, but I think for me, I don't think it would have made much of a difference, because I think my competition was always mostly with myself, and the things that drove me were also mostly with myself or to do with my family and to live up to certain expectations. Um, so I think even now, so you'll see that I'm not very active on social media. Even if we do something massive and amazing, I still like our PR team at Josh has to push me to post it. So I think somewhere relative to what I have seen some of my peers, I don't think I get influenced so much by any kind of social pressures.
Why don't you use social media much? Like, is there a specific reason behind it? Mental health, or what is it? You just don't enjoy it?
So how I think of things is very simple. Like at all times there is something to achieve, right? And I think that's common for anybody, right? At all times there is something in your mind that is priority, and what I really just try to do is list down what exactly is my priority and achieve it. And whatever is unnecessary to achieve it is generally not done. So I'll just list down. So for example, like I have things like these are all my posters. I don't think you can see them clearly. They all mention things like, okay, this quarter, what do I need to get done? And then there is priority one, priority two, and priority three kind of things. And there are of course a lot of things there. But like I read somewhere that success is a function of optimization of time. Um, and so if I just look at all of these things, I just divide them, give what deserves how much time. I see that, okay, I have no time left for anything else. Social media almost never makes it as being important enough to get done. So it never happens. That's it. There's no other reason.
Wow, and sorry, even before we get into Josh Talks, because I really want to touch on that, because this is something that a lot of people can just use as well, because it's really
Yeah.
interesting how you prioritize. What's your practice for it? Do you do it once a quarter? Do you reshape it every week, every day? How do you kind of think about when you're setting your objectives? How do you plan it and go about it?
So I try to do a 5 year and a quarter, because I noticed that whenever I do 1 year, it doesn't work out, because not far enough to want something and to be able to tangibly work towards. But 5 years is something you can actually work towards, and then I look at every quarter. But I don't look at the quarter very very strictly. I look at the 5 years strictly, and then I look at, okay. And then I just got a priority list. It's based on, you could say, a quarter, right? So I have things like, okay, I can talk about one of them. This
Mm-hmm.
was to get lean, right? So one of the six priorities I have right now is to get lean, and that means to reduce body fat percentage to under 10ish percent, under 6ish percent, um, somewhere in that range.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so what I'll do is that, let's say I have 4 or 5 other priorities like this, and these can be personal and professional, right? So Josh is also there, something to do else in my personal life is also there, and even become super lean is also there. So, and then I'll just divide my time like this. So I have about, let's say, 16 good quality awake hours,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll just divide the 16 hours into these six priorities, and that's it.
Wow, that's a really interesting and cool way to think about it. That's something that I'm definitely gonna start doing now too, because it makes sense. It really prioritizes how you spend your time, and if social media doesn't fit into that, you shouldn't use it.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I think the thing I realized was that, the thing that gives happiness is this feeling of accomplishment. And the feeling of accomplishment only comes when you accomplish something that you wanted to accomplish. So if it is to get a big social reach, if that becomes one of my priorities, great, I'll start spending time on social media. But what do I want to accomplish is really the question. And in all the things that I want to accomplish, like nothing related to social media ever comes. So therefore, I never am that active on social media.
is this a new practice, or it's something you've been doing for a long time?
So it's got. So I've been doing it. You could say in a strict enough manner since about a year now. And I definitely had the most productive year of my life in the last 1 year. But yeah, in some way or the other, I've been doing it for about 3 or 4 years. But I would say that really I've been doing it for about a year now.
Okay. Okay. So that's so interesting to me. And later in this conversation, I kind of want to get back into this point, and I want to talk to you about habits, but we'll get there. I want to talk about the story of Josh Talks, because it's also a very interesting one. And it started off when you decided to go back to college. And in another interview, I heard you tell this amazing story about a security guard and the quality of information. Could you expand on quality of information? Because that is something that really resonated with me when I moved to India. I realized, like, shit, like, everybody here is suffering from just a matter of circumstance. And that circumstance dictates your life. So, can you expand upon that point?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when the cycling was ending and everything was ending, I had to do something with my time. And the question that was, and one of the reasons I even left cycling and make this massive transition from Bangalore back, and this entire change period was happening, the questions that I was really asking was that, if you think about it, let's say, Arman, you have a child and there is a security guard who's the same age as you. He's also a security guard and he also has a child. Let's say you both have a son
Mm-hmm.
who has, and this child is in the hospital on day one of that child's life. Which of the two children do you think, Arman, is going to go out there and do better in life than the other?
Right. Statistically, my kid, just because of
Right.
luck.
And exactly, so, like, obviously your kid, like, the other kid would have to really not follow the traditional path. Something exceptional would have to happen in that kid's life for that kid to do well. Now, this is not a bad thing that we're talking about. This is reality. That at the end of the day, like kabiliyat pe baat hi nahi aayi. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not about your ability at all. It's about pure luck. So it doesn't matter, was that security guard's kid more capable than your son, or was he more intelligent, was he anything. It doesn't even matter. Just because of the way currently the world works, if you're born into a household that is educated, that has more money, the quality of life and the quality of nurturing that you will get and the quality of information you will get over the first 20-25 years of your life will be so different from this kid, the security guard son, that matlab, at 25 you see these two kids, it's going to be a world apart. um, and what we really believe at Josh is that this was true until yesterday, until now. But now, because of the internet, you can actually standardize a lot of those things. So Arman, what is it that you are going to do, give to your son, or create that ecosystem for your son for the first 25 years? If we look at that, we can replicate a lot of that for the security guard's son through the mobile phone.
Mm.
um, and and I think that will change the whole world. This is like a human revolution, right? It's not about starting an ed tech company here, right? This is about like the industrial revolution. uh, with then the computers coming. This is sort of like the next stage where you, what if, so here is another crazy thing. Okay, 90% of India makes less than 30,000 rupees a month household income. So Arman, the
Wow.
security guard, yeah, firstly, that is goddamn crazy. And this is not me saying, this is incredible sources that are saying this, right? Now if we look at that security guard that we were comparing you with, your son and the security guard's son, that security guard probably, if he works in Delhi, makes about 15,000 rupees a month salary. If he's brought his wife with him from the village, she probably works as a maid house to house. Let's say she makes 3,000 rupees a house, does 5 houses, she makes 15,000 also. Together they make about 30,000 rupees a month. That security guard that we are saying has no chance of doing as well as you will do is top 10% richest Indians.
What?
90% of India is even below that. So that security guard who we are saying is poor
Mm.
is top 10% richest Indian. Now, why I'm saying this is because this is a massive issue. This is so large that we need to talk about this. And that's what Joe Stokes' attempt is to do, where where we think that certain amount of information can standardize the quality of nurturing that you get in these two completely different homes.
And how did you? I feel that's so true. It's crazy that 30,000 makes you the top 10% in India. That's absurd. That would make you in poverty in any other country. That's wow. That's crazy to hear. But so, what were the first steps that you took toward making that change? Because I completely agree. The democratization of information through your phone is going to change everything. And so, what were the first steps that you guys took?
So I'll share how we are thinking about this, right? And how
Mm-hmm.
we were thinking. So imagine now we have established that these two kids, if they were born um, to these two fathers or these two sets of families that were completely different, would have very different chance of success, right? Now, what if we do this? Okay, let's take 25 years, Arman. You take the 25 years of life of your son and the 25 years of life of that security guard's son, and you make that into 1 hour. Just a hype, just for the sake of this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine those two kids, you give them the same information for that 1 hour, sitting in the same room. So, so,
Mm-hmm.
so they're both sitting in a room, and you give them, show them the same videos, you give them the same teacher, same information, just 1 hour. So you've taken 25 years of life and made it into one hour. Now what will happen is that if you standardize information, both will now get an equal opportunity to do well. Now it will come down to kabiliyat. Now it will come down to who you are as a person, and what you got there. So we will increase the chance of success of people if we standardize information, right? Because so so that is what Josh is going to attempt to do. That we take the thing that happened to you and me in our first 25 years, and we try and do that by design for the rest of the audience that did not get the opportunity to do that.
Starting off though, right, you have this big dream and you have this big goal that a lot of us do, right? Everybody has these ideas that can potentially change the world. A lot of people do, but the execution is the bit where, I would say 99% of people fail. And it's not that 99% of startups fail, it's probably that 99% of people don't execute efficiently. So you were a young kid, you were in college. How did you start about executing? Was it about small steps, or did you go, you know what, we're going to go big and we're going to, do huge things right off the start?
I think the really interesting thing was that we didn't have an idea for a company. We had a
Mm.
problem, right? We didn't want to start a company. We didn't want to create a solution to something. We just had a problem, a problem that we were very passionate about solving. And that's all, right? And, just to re-stress how paranoid we were about this problem, it's like, let's say you have 100 rupees, um, and 90 of that gets lost, you know, like you'll get crazy, right? But that's what's happening to human resource today, where only like that security guard is also top 10%. So it's basically, we are saying that 90% of India is not going to contribute meaningfully enough to create value in the world. And that's literally what is happening. And this was a very insane level of conversation that we used to have. So Supriya and I used to just discuss this problem all the time. So when we were starting out, we didn't actually want to start a tech company that does this. We didn't want to start a talks platform that did this. We just had this problem we were very passionate about solving. It was this wrong that we wanted to right. Um, so when we started out, we tried and put down that, okay, what was really different in what is going to be very different in Arman's son's upbringing and a security guard's son's upbringing? What is going to be drastically different? Um, and we tried and separate those things out and create products for each of those things. So the first thing that we saw was very, very different was um, access to role models, people who defined what was obvious for you, what was doable, people who created those benchmarks of what to do in life, kind of a thing, right? So if you think about it, for us, it was a very normal thing to think of to become a doctor, right? Or to become, like, get into Google, like try and get into Google. It seemed like a very realistic, achievable. You can go and try to get into Harvard, to go and try to do all of those things. But for the majority of the audience, a lot of those things are not what is the path to go forward, right? Many people in the village have never heard of anyone even get into a decent government job, let alone go out there and do so well. So what we really wanted to, the first thing that we started doing was give rural youth access to role models. So what Steve Jobs did for you and me, create Steve Jobs for this audience. So this would be the Steve Jobs equivalent for this audience would be a Dalit farmer's son who became a doctor at Ames.
Mm.
right? So to look at that guy would be like, damn, that's crazy. What, you can do that? That happens? This guy looks like me. He talks like me. He's from the village behind my village. He
Mm-hmm.
became a doctor at Ames. What? It's and the awe factor is very much what we had when we listened to probably the Stanford commencement speech of Steve Jobs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was the objective behind the first product, which we said will open the eyes up of people to more and fantastic things. It's like, if you haven't seen a BMW, you don't want it. So it's to
Mm-hmm.
show people what is possible, what you can do, what you can achieve with your own potential, and what you can go out there and become. Now, another reason that we chose to start with Josh Talks, which were these talks by people, was because we were in college, we had not much money, and we were going to get a chance to do a startup maybe once, and if it goes wrong, I especially had done so many things that had not worked out yet, that there was this pressure that, if now it doesn't work out, I'm going to have to go and listen to my parents and do whatever they tell me to do, which I was wrong about. Of course, they would have, now that I look back, they would have let me do other things. But Supriya and I both had this pressure that, okay, we have to make this work. So choose something easy where the chance of success is higher, and the money it will cost is very, very low. So therefore, we started with Josh Talks, which was basically talks by people from the grassroots of India who had done incredibly well in their lives and showcase their stories to this audience that had never heard such stories before. And that is everything.
So,
Like, what is drive? Drive is an very strong itch to achieve something, right? Some drives we are born with as humans, right? Let's say a drive to eat, a drive to have sex, a drive to do other things. Like, this is very human drives. But a lot of these other drives that help you unlock your potential have to be put in you. And
mm-hmm.
currently, especially in India, there was no system to put them in people. Um, and we saw that YouTube was that tool to do it. It could happen very low cost. There were these stories, we just simply had to compile them, and once you put this thought in people, you created the chance of somebody having a drive to do well. You increase that chance. Um, so so yeah, that's what we were attempting to do, and
That's
that's what
that's
happened eventually with Josh.
That's awesome. And I recommend everybody go check out Josh Talks on YouTube and on their website. I'll put in the links below because they have talks in every single language. Because, like he said, it needs to resonate with the specific tier two, tier three, or anybody that they're targeting and is listening. And Shobhit, I want to end with a few rapid fire questions. And the first one is, do you have any routines, be morning routine, evening routine, or habits that you feel are you have to have in your day that allow you to have a successful day?
So I'll talk about this in two ways. One is a successful day, and then is other habits that I abide by in life. So for a successful day, I think it's very, very straightforward. So I don't like to get up at a certain time and sleep at a certain time, because I feel that it just doesn't work for me. What I do define is a very strict to-do list that gets created from an overall to-do list, like, which is the objective, the priorities that I need to achieve. So nothing in my to-do list is ever of anything out of those six things that are my priority right now. So that is my first thing, that, if you have that, then you create a to-do list that only has the things that help you achieve them, and then you block time to achieve them. That's it. You don't do. So I would say that is the one habit, that I have. Apart from that, another habit is that, so I leave my computer on with my to-do list visible all the time. So when I'm walking in, walking out, doing anything, it's available. So even sometimes I'm going to sleep at 2 at night, and I'll see my laptop's open and the to-do list is there. I'll just go to it, have a look, and probably I'll sneak another 2 to 3 hours just sitting and doing something. That really ends up making all the difference. Is is basically, so work a lot on creating an ecosystem that helps you push a lot. So so you don't have to all the time have the motivation to put, but just create that environment that helps you push a lot.
Wow. And
So
do you have any thoughts on work-life balance? How's that? How does that apply in your life? And do you think that you got to push very hard right now, or do you think that taking breaks is a necessary part to be efficient?
I so I don't know if I think of work life as work and life as two separate things, because everything gets defined by those priority things for me. So everything in the priority thing is something I need to achieve. Um, Now they can be personal, professional, work, not work. They can be anything. Like let's say becoming lean. I have a target body weight that I need to reach, and it doesn't matter whether that's Josh related or work related or not. It's just something that has to get achieved, and the time gets divided accordingly. Now, if I'm sitting and working for 8 hours and I'm unproductive, that's ridiculous. So I'll do whatever I need to do to achieve that well. I just think that, I think everybody needs to get to a point where they spend a lot of time calculating how will they reach from here to their objective, and then just do what they have to do in a day and forget about the rest. Like, no need to overthink this, when to take a break, when not. Just achieve those things, like wake up and you sleep. In the middle is all variables. I'll share another thing, like when it comes to habits, you have like you have to religiously follow your priority list or whatever you want to achieve. Like, it has to be a very religious attempt, so everything in your life has to revolve around those things completely. It's almost like if somebody lives with you, they should feel an aura from you. It's that you are so, like, there is nothing else that you do. So even if you're watching TV, or you're watching Netflix, it is so that you can be fresh to go and achieve that thing. So even if I'm drinking water, it is so that I'm hydrated and I'm there. So nothing that you do is not for them, not to achieve. And if you're doing anything for some other reason, put that in the priority list. Then obviously you care about it. Um, so I think yeah, to the point that, for example, I have to become lean, and my um, so so if I just, there are too many notifications right now, but even my phone cover is, like it's just like there's nothing else in life. Like, it's just these six things that I do, and for
Wow.
this quarter it's just going to be these six things.
That's so powerful. And one last question is, are there any books that you feel have influenced your life, and which ones are they?
So my recommendation again, because I'm very very influenced by people, I recommend, firstly, that um, don't read one book about a person, read every book about that person. Because if you truly want to be influenced, if you like somebody and you want to be truly influenced by somebody, there is actually a way that you get to know that person so deeply, that you can, a lot of times in life, put yourself in that person's shoes and take decisions, or you can put that person in your own shoes. But for that, you need a very very, like like extreme level of reading about that. So of course I've done that with Steve Jobs and a bunch of these guys, right? The traditional fellows. So I won't name any of those books, but the few books that I really really liked, one is Behind You, Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman.
Yeah.
I love to read about people who are not necessarily so famous, but little bit oddballs, with weird ideas, who went and achieved crazy things. Another book I recently read, which will really, I think, define a lot of the things that I do, will be The $1 Trillion Coach. Um,
The one about, that's about Bill Campbell, right?
yes, Bill Campbell. Yeah, it's a very very interesting book. Again, it gives you an insight into a guy who is insane. Um, and then this Michael Jordan series on Netflix.
That's
Uh,
amazing. That's
that's amazing.
amazing.
It's not for basketball fans only, but I believe that if you're not a basketball fan, you're in a much better point, a much better place to take in a lot of the things that he's saying, um, because you're not distracted with the scores and the things like that. You can purely look at, you can look at it from a slightly disconnected place. So I think, like that is phenomenal. It's just like reading a book, extremely valuable. But again, I read mostly books that are about people, um, because that gives you sort of a way to be. So yeah,
Awesome.
I would say that, yeah.
Awesome. Well, Shobit, dude, I'm so happy that you came on the show. I really appreciate it. I learned so much from it. Thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, it was great to have you.
Thanks a lot for having me on.